Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Ow. Talk to him. I mean, sometimes you got people going against you and you just gotta go above and beyond all that. Let's go. Straight up the top, just so you know ain't no stopping us. Yeah, I see you been watching us. You could try, but you better off. I ain't a spectate from the audience. Why you hating from the bleachers? Cheerleaders is loving us. Grab a pom-pom, baby. Last year we was last place, this year we in first. We was hungry for the title, now we quenching our thirst. You was on your best behavior, yeah, we on our worst. Killing the competition, rolling around in a hearse. Life is like chess, except it ain't a game. Some pawns remain pawns, some pawns become kings. Think before you move, think 3 steps ahead. Peep game, protect queen. Some rooks get took, some knights get swiped, some bishops get slain. I'ma tell you like my homie told me, life is like chess except it ain't a game. So when you gotta want it, you know my team want it, you know my team want it. You ain't no stopping us, nah, ain't no stopping us, nah, ain't no stopping us. And when you gotta want it, you know.
What's up, guys? Brian from Nine Toes Fishing. One of my subscribers asked that I do a video on reel maintenance. So we're going to kind of do a basic reel maintenance breakdown, and then we're going to do a full teardown so you guys can kind of see what to do and how to clean it, stuff like that. Now keep in mind, I'm doing this on a KVD Quantum. All the reels are a little bit different, but the main premise is pretty much the same. So we'll just get right into it. We'll start with the basic reel maintenance and then work our way up. So again, this is just a KVD Quantum. So on this one, the side plate is the first thing you remove. Just push the button, twist it up, comes off. So inside of there is your little magnetic spooler. Your regular spool will slide through, and you've got pretty much the inside of it. So what I like to do most of the time is take like a little painter's brush. They can get a lot of buildup on the inside of these things. And so I'll use this just to kind of clear out any little grass chunks or weeds or, you know, up here the water gets kind of green, so there's some algae, stuff like that. So I just try and get out the main stuff out of there and clean it up as best as I can for just a basic maintenance, right? So I'll go through that, get it all cleaned up, get any of the gunk and junk that might be built up inside of there out of there. So some of the main points that you want to grease just from a or oil just from a basic maintenance standpoint. There's a little spooler right in here that your line guide rotates on, so you can see your line guide rotating back and forth there. Your little spooler right here, I'll put a little touch of grease on that, or a little touch of oil. Down on the inside here where your spool slides in, a little touch of oil inside of there. Then I'll put a little bit of oil on the main shaft, and then this part right here. And from a basic standpoint, that's really all there is to it. You don't have to do a whole lot more. I tear them down completely every year, once a year, but just for basic maintenance, that's it. Unless they start making a lot of noise, I won't do a full tear down. But if you want to get into the full tear down, it's really quite simple. So again, just pull your side plate off, your spool out, and I kind of set them out in the order of which I put them back in, right? So on this particular reel, there's a little screw here that you'll take out, and that will expose the nut underneath there, so we'll do that. Basically, most of them just use a small standard flathead screwdriver. Nothing, no crazy tools are required. Small standard flathead or a Phillips. Then you got this little plate. This little plate will just pop up and off. And underneath that is the nut. So I should also say that I use a white mat. One, it prevents things from me dropping it and then bouncing. And number two, whatever I lay on here, I can see really easy rather than using a darker colored mat. So once you get that cover off, you've got the little nut there. So I'll just take a little pliers. These aren't put on tight at all, so just a little quick turn, and that little nut will come loose. And again, I lay everything out in the order in which I take it off. Reel handle will come off. Now you've got your drag, so just loosen it, and as you loosen it, it will unthread from the shaft there. Then I'll lay that down. Now in here, so I've got a little bit of hair, a little line, whatever it is. So now you're down to this. This little guy here, just a couple of washers and a little round deal. Kind of slides out of there fairly easy. On the bottom of this particular reel, there's a couple of washers. So what I like to do is take the 2 washers out of the top. I lay them down in the exact direction that I want them to go back up in. Lay those down. Then I lay that piece down. Then this washer. And then there's one more washer on here that never comes off with the main part. So we'll get that off of there. Just give it a little tap and she'll come down. And again, just laying them out in order of how they come off. So now that part is all done. So now you've got 3 screws on this particular reel. One here, one here, one here, that hold the main part of the face on. And then when you flip it over on this reel, there's 2 more. Sometimes they're just on the outside. Sometimes you've got them on the inside. So you just got to kind of take a look at the reel that you have and use it and do it accordingly. I leave this little one on, your tightener there. Leave that on because that'll come right off with the reel. So we'll pop these little screws out. And what you'll notice on a lot of them are the reels on the outs, or the screws on the outside of the reel are generally speaking shorter than the screws on the inside. So it's fairly easy to figure out where they came from in case you do get back to, or in case you do get a little bit confused or forget. It's also not a bad idea to take pictures as you're pulling it apart so you can compare it to the reel when you're putting it back together to make sure you're getting everything in the right spots. These inside ones are a little bit of a funky angle. The screwdriver likes to fall off of them, but it's not too terrible overall. So we'll get these 2 out. I don't know if you can hear, but the kids are in there hollering and screaming and causing all kinds of mayhem. So then this just slides right off. So now you got your cover off and you've got the inside of the reel exposed now. So now you just lay the cover down to the side and now you've got this part. So again, just take them off and put them back on in the order in which you pull them off of. That way you don't get confused. It's not too difficult to put it back together. So you got your bearing system there, little bearing collar, little rubber washer. You got your big main gear here, which will come off as soon as you... Sometimes you got to take this washer out first, sometimes you don't. This one appears to be a little bit more stuck on there. There we go. So there's your main bearing portion. Inside of here there's a washer, a couple of little washers, so just pull those off and down. Another little gasket washer, another gear. Now your main part of the reel is all exposed. So these are all your grease points in here. So I don't take this off. I do take this out, which has the smaller gear on it, and then the little spring assembly. So I'll take those out. This just slides into the knuckle. Sorry about the slamming doors, folks. Then you got all of that all out and ready to be cleaned up. So basically what I'll do is just take another one of these little brushes and I'll just clean out any of the gunk that might be in here. Any of the old grease, kind of work it through. Make sure any of the old crud and stuff is out of there. This one actually looks in really, really good shape. Considering as much as I abuse these things throughout the year. Gears all look good, nothing's stripped down, nothing's worn out. Everything still looks like it's in like new working order, which is awesome. So once you get all that stuff cleaned out of there, you're pretty much ready to start greasing it up. And I'll go through the inside here a little bit and continue to get a lot of this junk and stuff out of there. You can do it at the end, you can do it at the beginning, it doesn't really matter. But if you're going to do it, you might as well get it all cleaned up and not cut any corners. So from a product standpoint, like I don't have any affiliation with any other cleaning companies. I use Ardent stuff, Real Butter for the grease, or for the oil, Real Butter for the grease, and then this is just a Real Clean, so you can kind of clean it up as you go for just your basic everyday maintenance. So a couple of the areas that I put the grease on, obviously here where these gears come together, that's important to have those things greased up. So I'll hit that spot there. And a little bit of this stuff goes a long way. You don't need a lot. So what I do on these gears is I will put just a little bit along the edge of where the gears are. So you can see I just put a little bit on that end, and then I'll just spin this thing through. And that pretty much coats both of those gears. And then use a little painter's brush or whatever you want to kind of spread it around. You don't need a ton, but you know you're going to be using this all year long. So if you do put a little too much on there, it's not that big of a deal. You're not going to hurt anything. It's not going to bleed through or anything like that. But it's going to give you some nice smooth action. So this piece here, I'll pop these little springs out, and I'll get this guy cleaned up. And I just use a little white rag generally, just to wipe off any excess old stuff that might be on there. And get it cleaned up as much as I can. Same thing with the little springs, I'll clean them up as much as I can. And then seat, this is your little, little brass gear driver. I don't know what you call these parts, I'm not gonna lie. So we're gonna call this the gear post assembly. It basically goes on your big gear, so we'll get that done here. That guy just kind of slides right into this guy here. So what I like to do here is put just a little bit of grease right on this little metal half ring here. Put a little bit on the inside because you know that gear is gonna run around on that thing. A little bit around the inside of this guy. A little bit on the gears themselves. Again, use the brush just to kind of spread it around, make it even. Pop it on, slide it back into place. So now we got that in. Got your two springs. Slide those over and down the posts. So that part's done. Now we'll take the main gear here, clean off all the junk on it, and put a little circle of grease around both sides. Wipe it in, slide it over the top and down. It's like a little carbon fiber bushing type of a washer. I'm not really sure what it's called, but I put a little bit on the top side of that one. I don't put any on the bottom side of this one just because I put enough grease on that other thing, so that should be plenty. This guy here, take out and clean up real well. Clean up the little washer that goes in the middle. Clean up the washer that goes on top. I don't know if you have to put grease on the inside of this. I'll put a little bit just because. Slide that guy over the top. I'll put a little grease on both sides of the main washer. Again, a little bit goes a long ways. Don't overdo it, don't underdo it. If you feel like you need a little bit more, put a little bit more on there. It's not gonna ruin the reel any for sure. Then slide that right down and over the gear. Make sure it seats fine. I always give it a turn, make sure everything's turning. That all looks good. And again, I'll put it on the teeth of the gear itself. Give her a few spins just to make sure we're doing what we need to do. Looks good. I'll put just a little bit more in here. Perfect. Then you got your little rubber O-ring. That goes on there next. I don't grease that. That's basically the little deal that the collar slips into. I will put a little bit of grease on the collar itself, on the inside. Kind of wipe it around in there. Put a little bit on the outside. And then this just kind of slides down and into that washer down there. Next up is the little bearings portion of it. Try and clean up the inside of it pretty decent. This one's actually really pretty clean considering it's probably been dunked in the water 4 or 5 times and everything else. So I'll just put a little bit down on the inside of this and just spread it around with this real good, and a little bit on top, a little bit on the bottom. Slide that guy down and in. And then your other bearing goes right down on top of that. And that'll sit right on top of that collar. And then clean the inside of the cap. I don't put any grease on the inside of this thing, but you can. A little bit around the outside doesn't hurt, but most of the time you're going to get enough grease that are on the gears that it's just fine. So this goes over just like this. Slides right over the top. That should push right back down and in. At least it's supposed to. Make sure it's all seated correctly. It is. So we're good there. Slide this back down and over the top. And then you take your screws and get all those put back in. So I start on the top ones, because then when I flip it over, the top ones will hold it from falling off. Don't have to over tighten these, and please don't. Once you get it snug, just lay off. These screws are generally not the strongest. They're fairly easy to strip out. So just very lightly screw them down and in. Once you feel them snug, that's good enough. Flip it over, get the other two in. The other two generally are harder to get in than they were to take out for some odd reason, but it's not too terrible. It's just because these other ones are so little, it's hard to keep the screwdriver on them. Get the other one in. Tell you what, I don't know what's in the water out here, but my kids are nuts tonight. Comment down below if your kids are nuts tonight too. That way I know it's not just my kids, and maybe it's the phase of the moon or something, but boy, they are nuts. All right, so now you got that part done. Perfect. Then all your little washers go back in place. So washer number 1, down and in. Washer number 2. And again, they're going right back on the exact same way that they came off. Washer number 3. Slide them down. Washer number 4. Slide them down. Screw your drag system back on. You'll start hearing it click here in a minute when the spool is tight. So just leave it at that for now. Before I put the handle on, I will oil these. So, like I said on here, I just put a little bit of oil on the spool itself, on the spool spindle, a little bit here, a little bit on the inside, and that'll keep it nice and protected as you put everything back together. All back together there. We'll tighten that drag down real good. And we will slide the reel handle back on. The nut. You don't need to over tighten this either, but just make sure it's good and tight. You don't want it too loose. You don't want it so tight that you're going to strip it out. I'm just going to give it a couple spins and make sure she's operating as she should. Looks beautiful. Spinning nicely, smooth, no loose parts. Coming along very nice. Then I will put the reel cover back on. This is the part where you might need to look at it a little bit. If you over tighten it, it will pull that nut out of alignment, or the hole out of alignment. So you may need to loosen it up just a little bit, just to make sure that it's in the right spot for the hole. Got that. Tighten that back down and on. Last step, I'll throw a little bit of oil down in this assembly here. Run it through a little bit, and you've got a perfectly clean reel that is running nice and smooth. That's it, guys. That's all there is to it. Don't be afraid to tinker with them and get your stuff up and running good for the 2019 season. Thanks for watching, folks. We'll be back with another episode later on this week.